Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. A new survey from Bankrate shows that 42% of Americans say that their household finances have not recovered since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. We're joined now by Greg McBride, Chief Financial Analyst for Bankrate.com. Greg, so the survey finds that half of the people surveyed took a financial hit because of the pandemic, and 42% say that they haven't recovered. What does this say about the economic recovery at large?
Well, Kristen, thanks for having me back. This speaks specifically to income. So, we have found that, half of households had taken a hit, but very few have seen a recovery in that income to pre-pandemic levels. As you noted, 42% still in a situation where they have less income now than they did pre-pandemic, illustrating that this hardship extends beyond those that are unemployed. There are a lot of people that are still working or have been called back to work, but they're making less than they were because they have reduced hours. They've had to take a pay cut, where they are in a business that is operating with a skeleton crew or just as in a fraction of the volume that they did before.
It took years for folks to recover from the Great Recession. Some actually never did. I'm wondering what you think the broader knock-on effect of this is going to be perhaps 10 years from now. Do you think that we could start to see or hear of people still not recovering from this pandemic in 5 years or even 10 years?
Unfortunately, I think there will be some element of that. Now, how does that size up versus what we saw after the Great Recession? Time will tell. But yes, we're going to feel that effect, and not just at the household level from an economic standpoint. You certainly look at from an educational standpoint, all the kids that, who, their educational pathway has been severely disrupted. What price do we end up paying in the long run for that? So definitely going to be some long run ramifications from this. And at the household and career level, disruption clearly going to be a part of that.
When the pandemic first started, folks were talking about who was going to be the most impacted negatively during this pandemic. And now you guys have the data. So who was most impacted negatively in terms of their finances because of this pandemic?
What we are seeing is that the data supports this notion that it is falling hardest on lower income households and younger workers. We found 63% of millennials and Gen Zers have taken a hit to their income since the outbreak of the pandemic, bookended by 37% among baby boomers. So big difference there. And income, while there wasn't much of a difference in income groups in terms of taking a hit on the income, where we are noticing the differences, well, whether that rebounded or not, 30% of those that make above $80,000 a year have seen that income rebound, but it's only 9% for those that are the lowest earners, below $30,000 a year.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that point, because this is something that we also did see over a decade ago. At least when it came to that economic recovery, we saw the top earners in the United States really essentially make most of, if not all, of that economic recovery, whereas we saw lower income workers really struggling. I'm wondering what you see this, how you see this impacting or perhaps fueling this widening gap that we're seeing when it comes to wealth inequality in the country right now. If you think some of this data speaks to that, that this pandemic will continue to create this division of wealth between the haves and the have-nots.
This pandemic is unique in the sense that, normally when we have a recession, you see it really hit manufacturing, but many services continue to kind of keep trucking along, right? And it's been different this time around. It's the service sector that's really taken it on the chin. That's where we've had to shut down businesses or restrict their volume of customers coming in. And that's where people are really feeling it. And so I think it is going to exacerbate that issue of lower income workers taking a hit that has been prolonged and then having a deeper financial hole from which they need to dig out of once the economy is in a full-blown recovery mode.
Economic anxiety is something that we've been chatting about a lot lately, especially with these stimulus negotiations ongoing. As folks say, they absolutely do need economic aid, not just from politicians, but from folks at home. I'm wondering what your survey found in terms of economic anxieties looking forward and going forward as the economic recovery really it has been going.
Yeah, we saw a big level of concern about this, Kristen, and it's getting worse. We did the same poll back in June, right now we find 85% of households say they're worried about their income declining in the months ahead because of the pandemic. So it's not just those that have already taken a hit, but even those whose incomes have not have a lot of concern about what might lie ahead. And that's up from 76% that back in June. So not only are more people worried about their income, we also see greater pessimism on how long it takes for that income to come back. More than half of people say now it's going to take at least 6 months, if not more, for their incomes to rebound. That's up pretty notably from 37% in June.
All right. Well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this economic recovery and how folks are able or unable to recover in the next coming years. Greg McBride, Chief Financial Analyst at Bankrate.com. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kristen.